Hello, this is Sushil and welcome to You Next Officer. Today I have brought you a different question which would combine both one of the important concept of resource mobilization and linking that with the current scenario and the current situation which government is facing with tax-free bonds, whether it's effective or not when we have that bigger possible hit in COVID situation. So the question today reads out, what do you understand by resource mobilization and how effective are tax-free bonds in mobilization of revenue in COVID hit scenario? Before wasting much of time, let's get into the topic as soon as possible with small understanding that I want to give you. So as the question asks, what do you understand by resource mobilization as one part and other as how effective are tax-free bonds? Does it mean we need to have these two questions as half each? No, we need not dedicate them half. The question, if you understand properly, though we asked about resource mobilization, the major part is about how effective are these instruments of tax-free bonds forms the major part. So you can divide like some 70-30. Okay. Uh, let's dedicate some 25 to 30% for this first question, and then 75 or at least 70% to next part. So we have our mindset proper. Now let's get to the situation. How to write the answer. So in introduction, let's first start with definition, and that would be the simplest thing you can do. Some other extravaganza, but keep your mind fresh. Don't strain with unnecessary creativity so that you can use that energy, that freshness in the later part of question, if possible, for the next question as well. Then, now we need to, we can't just end that first question with the straightforward definition, but we need to ensure we form a connectivity within our content to the next part of the question. So let's take up this idea about recognizing the situation, because the recognizing the situation is first step towards solving a problem. So let's write uh, content like recognizing that government's budgets are stretched and the current crisis will further affect the receipts. When I say receipts, it's tax receipts. Tax receipts will be affected. So we must think some innovative financing mechanism. So that innovative financing mechanism could be anything else. So as the question is asking about tax-free bonds, we would link the situation that this innovative instrument is tax-free bond. So what is tax-free bond? Unless you find something unique, people or institutions won't invest in a particular financial instrument. So are we luring them? Are we enticing or tempting them with higher interest rate? No, because government can't afford to pay that higher interest rate. Instead, we are making the instrument attractive by 100% tax concession, which means we would not lay any tax on the money you earned over those bonds. That 100% tax concession is another term for tax-free bonds. That's how you enter the scenario. So more than anything else, more than anything else, you need to ensure you create a proper link from your introduction to the body. Don't jump immediately. So that link will fetch you one extra mark. So plus one, that plus one is something you need to accumulate in every answer to ensure you are aggregating to a proper and safe score. Because uh, in GS3, you're not as fresh as you're writing with GS1, GS3, GS4. You don't find a difficult paper, but you're exhausted already. So accumulating the marks is what matters. Okay, now as we entered the body, so here we can say they could explore various paths and instruments to either emulate the erstwhile war bonds. Just to give a background about what war bonds are, during World War, and again after every war, country will experience huge inflation and maybe famines, all of them. Even in India, you find those Bengal famine. In England or Britain or UK, whatever you call it, they find the government losing. Winston Churchill won the World War II, but he lost his own government. So then Attlee bought a new concept, which they said it is GDP linked bond, which means if your GDP is growing 20%, you will get 20% returns. Your GDP is not growing, you won't get anything else. That doesn't mean if your GDP is plummeting and giving some minus 23% return, they will snatch your money. No, no, no. Nothing like that. You have lower cap, but if your GDP is growing higher, then you will get those returns. So it is like betting on a recovery story of a country. If you're confident about recovery in India, then you can bet on this emerging market of India that it will recover faster. And even government, if the GDP is increasing by 20%, it will be happy to collect more taxes and pay at that interest rate. So such was this concept that was developed after World War II. Can we do that? Uh, but this was something like we never return actual amount. We just give interest. So it should be perpetual in nature. Do you know any perpetual bond other than this? Perpetual bonds? There's a concept, but in reality, in news recently with the Yes Bank's crisis, you found 81 bonds, additional tier 1 bonds. This is important for your prelims if you remember. So these concepts could be used by government because government will be more trusted as it is sovereign than any other entity within the country or within the territorial realm. So you can say these all things could be innovative ideas. Along with them, you can bring one more possible way of mobilizing funds is, and before this you need, it would be a value addition if you write an answer, as you find RBI bringing this retail investors a chance to invest in government bonds or gilt bonds or whatever you call G6. Retail investors find slightly burdened by the ticker size. What is ticker size? What is the minimum amount you can invest in it? So the ticker size is usually somewhere around 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs. So instead, you ask them to bring the ticker size to 10,000. probably you'll find larger audience and more people ready to buy that bond, because your planned mobilization should not fail, which causes humiliation, and there will be a message that government is not able to raise the funds at lower rates. So people will demand higher interest to give you money. They'll cash out the situation. It should be a message that government, if not you, the other would be investing. Then, if that is the situation, yes, government will have their work done easily. Okay. Now, another benefit is that if you keep this sticker size of 10K instead of 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs, it will not lead to crowding out effect. So we are also escaping one more potential threat that could happen. One more problem that this can bring is crowding out. We are escaping that. When you escape this problem, then government will feel happy that even the fiscal policy to target inflation is also fulfilled. So if you look at this, we are discussing multiple concepts and we are inculcating in our answer. So this is something FRBM demands. You can take some borrowings, but ensure medium to long term safety or medium to long term stability is maintained. So government always thinks in short term, so make their vision longer. From short sightedness, bring them to a longer vision. FRBM is doing an effort. So let's discuss about that, and then let's give a classic example which India did in 1998. In 1998, if you remember, when Vajpayee was prime minister, there's a movie of China Brown. If you want, you can comment in the comment box. India went for nuclear test. India was aspiring to be a nuclear power, and India went for nuclear tests. So with those nuclear tests, India was facing sanctions. When India faced this sanction by America, then India was not afraid of facing them. Instead, India bought some innovative solution of bringing NRI bonds, whereby India encashed its strength of having Indian diaspora, which was living largely in USA and other European nations. So Indian diaspora could invest in those bonds, and it was like bringing a kind of nationalism card and making them invest in them. So India rose nearly $3.5 billion, which ensured India's forex reserves are not weak. So $3.5 billion was something good amount, and this figure might not sound great today, but in those days it was exceptional. So those Indian millennium, it was called actually, as we were approaching that millennium of 2000, they were called Indian millennium bonds. You can give this example and adds to the value that it is a practical solution and we have already did that. When we already did that, to emulate what we have already done sounds to be more practical solution that you're mentioning, and you're backing your argument that tax-free bonds could be effective. So, uh, more than anything else, during COVID crisis, we found lot of outflow, not inflow. We found outflow of capital. Many foreign investors were taking their money out of stock market, and other FIS were stressing out. So we can find some stability by ensuring ourselves with those. So with this discussion, I think I gave you a broader idea. Now let's look at how we would write an answer, then come back to how we can conclude it. So if you look at that, we started with the definition. Definition of resource mobilization is that it refers to set of activities by organization or government agency in securing new. You don't bring from your own treasury and say these are resources. Securing new and additional resources, because you are finding dearth of them, you are finding avenues for new and additional resources. Then we said we need to recognize the government's budgets are stretched out, and then the current crisis will further affect receipts of both state and central government. Remember, we're not just telling about central government, even state governments were finding it difficult. So we need to think innovative financing mechanism. We enter with this, we linked introduction to enter into the body. We thought of some innovative method like GDP linked bonds during World War, but we are mentioning when it could be successful only if it is perpetual enough, then it will serve the purpose. At this juncture, a tax-free bond, or you can give name as pandemic bond, in the lines of World Bank experiment that it has done during Ebola breakout, may suit circumstances. Now, one possible way of mobilizing funds through issues as smaller as 10,000, as we already discussed. What's problem with uh, retail investors? They find 2 lakhs or 5 lakhs burden, and that would be larger size, which may lead to crowding out effect. So to avoid that crowding out effect, we choose smaller ticker size to ensure impact of crowding out of private investment is very much lesser. And what's the merit of doing it? As it doesn't involve deficit financing or any implicit liquidity management, and no risk fluctuations in inflation. As I said, with the no crowding out, we don't find inflation over medium term for sure. This has to be done because unless you are getting into technicals, you can't prove yourself that you are having that understanding. Then, as we already said, we need to back our argument. We need to back our argument with some practical example. And we mentioned that in a nuclear test situation where India was facing sanctions, India went for resurgent India bonds, and we were able to find some $3.5 billion, with target being just, we actually thought only 2 billions was enough, but we got more than what it is required. And this is showing how immaculate was it to appeal NRS. So that immaculate step helped us reach a situation where we can ensure we are stable enough. despite the sanctions. Even NRS never failed to pump in dollars. Even a second such attempt was made during the issue of Indian Millennium Deposits. And now, not just 3.5, $5 billion was subscribed and raised $5.5 billion in 2001. And what is merit here? This, so here, I think you can use this as conclusion instead of the body part, taking a stand that tax-free bonds could be effective, that this option not only channelizes the funds but also stabilizes and stems the adversities of capital outflows, as I was discussing about how foreign institutional investors were pulling out their capital, and we can stem that adversity that rupee faces. So this could be a perfect stand, and at way forward or conclusion, you can have this. So on this note, hope you got some good understanding and insights over some good topics, slightly more technical, but I think I've justified and helped you learn something new, but more than anything else, to present them in an economy answer is slightly difficult, but as you practice such things, it will be much more easier to do this in the real examination. So do subscribe for such videos. I'll be back with new question next time. Till then, bye bye.